Hello, number ones. Welcome to Metatron Academy. If you've been watching my content on this channel for a while, you already know my position on Steve Kaufman. Now, I do, on one hand, appreciate Steve's passion and interest for language learning and foreign language acquisition. I enjoy the fact that he spent a lot of time trying to learn and increase his own level of foreign languages, and I enjoy the fact that he has visited and many places and traveled the world. On the other hand, though, he pisses me off very often because sometimes, unfortunately, he sounds extremely arrogant, and that annoys me. Arrogance in general annoys me. And for instance, the other day he was having this debate conversation with a excellent teacher of Mandarin, and I can never remember her name. I apologize profusely, but I'll put a link to the video in the description. And he kept saying how he disagreed with what she thought about pronunciation and the importance of learning how to master correct pronunciation of whatever it is, sounds that you're trying to learn, and learning how to reshape your mouth positions and whatnot. And he said, no, I don't need that because I have excellent pronunciation in 20 languages. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's not only it's not true, and it's a Dunning-Kruger effect, but it's also arrogant because it's not true. People do need to learn that, and you're not a good example of excellent pronunciation anyways. With that being said, I do like his prompt. I give him credit for that. Can we learn to sound native in another language? It's a very good question. Do we agree? Let's have a look.
As adult language learners, can we learn to speak like a native, sound like a native, achieve native-like fluency? Right up front, I will say that my answer is no.
My answer is yes. So already we've got to... Right. I imagine he's going to contextualize this and perhaps join or work on the idea that it's extremely rare. But then again, extremely rare doesn't mean no. It means yes with a caveat. I do believe that there are extremely talented individuals out there. I've met a few who can, in fact, reach a native-like level of fluency and pronunciation even though they started as adults. Now, given we have to contextualize the word adult, a 70-year-old man is an adult, so is an 18-year-old. So, of course, which adult are we talking about? But in general, I would say yes, but it's very rare.
I think overwhelmingly, it's not a realistic goal. It's not something that we can achieve as adult language learners, and I can explain why.
I think the reality here, Steve, is that maybe me and you can't achieve it, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible for people who are more talented than us, and we need to have the humility to accept that there are people that are better than us when it comes to a gift, if you will. And also, you could still, I think even people who aren't extremely talented can reach close to native, at least in vocabulary and really, really good pronunciation.
First of all, let's be realistic.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly, if there are, according to some estimates, 1.2, 1.5 billion language learners in the world today, 80% of them never get past A2. B1, which is sort of the beginning of some degree of ability to comfortably communicate, might add another 15 to 20%.
All of which is impressive but irrelevant to the question.
So most people never get past that. And if we look at the number of hours that are required to achieve these levels, once you get to B1, you have lots of hours ahead of you. You have a...
Okay, so I do appreciate that he's saying this. Now, given the number of hours here is just indicative of a general estimate, but of course, depending on what language you choose, these will change monumentally. But I know he knows that. I was just underlining this. Reality is, though, I do appreciate, I'm going to give him credit's due, that he's kind of countering this idea that fake polyglots and frauds present for clicks, where they tell you, I got fluent, or I learned this language in 3 weeks. No, it does require a decent amount of hours. So that's what needs to be underlined. I appreciate that he's saying that. But at the same time, you know the saying, if you love your job, you will never work a day in your life. It's the same thing with language learning. If you enjoy doing it, the fact that you might need 1,000 hours or 4,000 hours or 8,000 hours to reach whatever goal you have, doesn't matter. It's good. You're having a good time.
A long way to go. Or if we look at it in terms of the number of words that are required to be at this B2 or C1, C2 level, again, lots of words. And to be like a native suggests that you are at that upper level of C1 and C2.
I agree with that.
Now, granted, there is a difference between sounding like a native, saying a few phrases where your accent is very good and you sound almost native-like.
Agreed. Yes, sure. maybe not just a few phrases. Like if your accent is really, really almost native-like, you should be able to maintain it over an extended period of time.
Versus having such a high level of vocabulary that you can read, Proust in French and understand it.
The second one is easier. The second one is easier. Easier, so only comparatively. But personally, I'm not a native speaker of English, but I can comfortably read high-level vocabulary and academic vocabulary. Personally, I don't think it's that much of an achievement, but I can do it. I can do it. And in fact, let's not even talk about me, because again, I'm not like, oh wow, look at me. I think a lot of people reach the level that I have reached. But let's look at this from a different perspective. There are people that study a language, foreign language, and reach a C2 level of communication, communicative ability, proficiency. And they can absolutely read a text of biology, theoretical physics, and understand it. And there are natives that can't. So when you have an uneducated native, yeah, he's native, but then again, there are, when it comes to the ability, because he's now focusing on high-level vocabulary, you can be better than a native as a foreign language. Again, it's rare. Again, it's rare, but it can happen, depending on which native you choose. And I have a couple in mind that, The other thing, though, is pronunciation. Pronunciation is different. That one is even rarer. It's harder to achieve, but not impossible.
We've all seen the example of the university professor who has probably a very high level in, say, English,
yes,
but who has a strong accent. So there's this dichotomy between performance and actual knowledge of the language.
Sure.
And the suggestion of, sound like a native, speak like a native seems to focus in on performance, when actually language learning is more about communication and enjoyment.
I will partially agree on this. So I'm going to try, I don't want to strawman the guy. So let's agree, okay? Let's start from a common ground of agreement. I agree that language learning should be about enjoyment and having fun, and also the ability to communicate successfully. Thing is, though, in this case, it doesn't have to be a dichotomy, because you can try to reach very high levels of performance when it comes to pronunciation and high-level vocabulary, and have fun, and also communicate at the same time. The two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. For instance, there are plenty of people, and I think I am one of those, and do let me know in the comments if you are one of those, that really enjoy trying to sound like a native, or as close to a native as possible. Meaning that if you're studying Japanese, you love the pitch accent. If you study Mandarin, you love the tones, or also trying to make sure that you pronounce those vowel and consonant clusters correctly. And you're there like refining it every single day, listening and trying to get feedback from natives. A lot of people love that. So again, they're not mutually exclusive. Will every single person who tries to sound like a native succeed? No, but definitely their effort, as long as they're enjoying it, is going to make them sound better than they did had they tried. Now, there are some situations in which it might become an obsession to a point that perhaps people get frustrated and then they stop learning the language. Yeah, if that's happening, then ditch it. Just work on pronunciation, but ditch the idea of, I'm obsessed, I need to sound like a native Parisian. But if you're enjoying it, totally fine.
So when I, for example, started learning French, is because I was fascinated by French civilization. I wasn't very interested when I was in high school. I became interested, and that spurred me to do more learning. It was
probably that was the fault of the teachers, by the way, in high school.
It was never my intention to become like a native, although the native is always the model.
Yes, the native is always the model. The fact that it was never your intention, fine. Totally legitimate position. At this point, I don't want to be rude. I'm trying to be nice for once. Let's just leave it at that. It's fine that it wasn't your interest or intention. Other people can, and people are more talented than me and you, Steve. Why limiting them just because we can't reach that perfect level?
That's what we want to try to emulate. All the while we are realistic about the fact that we will not achieve that level. And I think I speak French quite well, but I have no illusions that I am native-like in my knowledge of French.
See, that's what I mean. He always puts himself as the prism of evaluation. Well, I couldn't sound like a native, so guys, we're never going to reach that level. There are people that sound extremely well. I also speak French. I know I have an accent when I speak French. I sound foreign. With that being said, why does that mean anything when it comes to someone who has a much better accent than me and you? Do you know what you see where I'm going with this? I'm not trying to be pedantic. Well, maybe a little bit. But the reality is that my pedantry here is important to underline the fact that he does this constantly. Just because you can't do it, Steve, or just because I can't do it, it doesn't mean that then no one else can do it. Let's just be real about this. Let's be humble about this.
And I have heard people who speak, say, English, and I think of some of the famous polyglots, on the internet, like Luca Lamporiello, and others who are very good at one or several languages, but there's always something that gives them away. And I say give them away in terms of not that me as a non-native speaker of, say, Spanish, try to judge a non-native speaker speaking Spanish. I mean a native speaker. I have heard people who speak English, let's say American English, very, very well.
Yes.
And for a while can sound like a native, but inevitably there will be something that gives them away.
I mean, that's fine. But to me, that's already an incredible achievement anyways, but I'll agree with him.
None of that matters, because even those people who achieve this almost native-like level of fluency in a language, they are a very, very small percentage of the people who are learning languages. So it becomes an unrealistic goal to pursue. The goal in language learning should be to find a way to enjoy it, to spend enough time with the language, enough hours of listening and reading and hopefully finding things of interest and enjoying the language without worrying about whether you will be mistaken for a native.
I'm laughing because you know what I'm going to say. What if people like me and a lot of the people in the comments, I'm sure, but look at Matt versus Japan, look at Dogen, Dashan in the Chinese space. What if people actually find that their way to enjoy the language and spend a lot of time with the language is, among other things, to try and sound like as close to a native as possible? Because that's a thing, Steve. I assure you, there are a lot of people, I know them, I know they're typing right now. They're like, oh yeah, when I try to learn Spanish, I really want to sound as close to a Spanish speaker as possible, a native speaker. I know, we exist, Steve. You're not one of us, that's fine. Not a problem, but we exist and we love it.
We've heard, I went to Germany and they identified my non-German accent and switched back to English. This is going to happen. I am identifiable as a non-German speaker, yet when I'm in German, I speak German. Most people respond to me in German, unless you have trouble making yourself understood.
Right.
In other words, if you are in that 85% of people who speak at a B1 max level, yes, there's a good chance that people will come back to you in English if they speak English better than you speak their language. But if you have a fairly decent level in the language, B2 has always been, to me, sort of a level of comfort, fluency, where the listener is comfortable and you are comfortable, but you're not being mistaken for a native speaker. That's a very achievable objective for most people if they're willing to put in the time.
I agree with that.
So to me, the key is that
I want to finish this sentence before he continues. To me, the key to that is, though, if you're not being understood and people are switching, yes, it could have to do with the fact that, as he says, maybe you're just B1, maybe you're A2, so you're struggling to use the vocabulary, grammar, whatever. But it's also possible that your accent is too thick. Like, honestly, working on pronunciation has to be done from day one, because not even if you don't, there are a lot of in-between levels, right? There is sounding almost native-like. Let's put an almost there. Sounding almost native-like, extremely high level, and then having such a thick accent they can't understand a word you're saying. It's not like it's one or the other. There are a lot of levels in between. And there are definitely massive advantages when it comes to working on your pronunciation a lot in order to reduce your foreign accent. You can still keep some. In fact, it can be lovely, right? It can be a charming aspect of the way you speak the language. Nothing wrong with that. But at least, let's not make it as if, it's just a matter of your grammar and vocabulary. No, pronunciation is important. And if people switch, or if people are like, they are struggling to understand you, it could be a pronunciation issue that should be addressed as early as possible, which is what a lot of people, including him, don't do. They fossilize wrong pronunciation because they think they give themselves this excuse, oh, it's fine if I don't sound like a native. And I'm like, right, but also you could have an intermediate level of pronunciation. His pronunciation in Italian is what it is, okay? Again, not trying to shame the guy, but I'm saying I don't know how his pronunciation in German is. I don't know how his pronunciation in French is. His Mandarin, not great. His Japanese, not great. So why not working on that? Don't use this excuse of, well, I don't sound like, no one sounds like a native anyways. No, put in the time to try and mimic natives as much as possible, because even if you can't read, you're not one of those, we are not one of those elites that reach this native-like level, that people are like, oh my gosh, you sound so close to a native, I couldn't tell you apart. I thought you were brought up in whatever the heck. Even if it's not me or you, still, we might reach an 80%, 70%, and it's guaranteed going to be better than that 20% of pronunciation accuracy that you would have had you not spent time actually working on your pronunciation. That's how it is.
Engage in the task of learning a language.
Yes.
In a way that we can control the process. We cannot control whether or not other people will think we sound like a native. That's beyond our control. We can control the amount of time we put in. We can control what we choose to listen to and read. To a large extent, we can control how much we enjoy the process. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that we should control.
I mean, I disagree, but I'm just going to stop because I'll let him speak.
I think back to when I created Link. Why was I motivated to do that? I had books at home in German and Spanish, as I've said before, full of words that I did not understand. I was motivated to understand those books better. I was not motivated to try to sound like a native. When I was hitchhiking in Spain back in the 60s,
cool,
sitting in, with a truck driver or a driver who picked me up, I was only interested in communicating.
Pronunciation accuracy is part of communication and success in communication. The closer you are to the natives, the better.
I was not interested in sounding like a native. However, because I put in the time, because I spoke to a lot of people, I listened to a lot of content, I read a lot of books particularly, which is very important. I accumulated a larger and larger vocabulary, better and better level of comprehension. I enjoyed the language. I improved. I improved to the level where I am satisfied. In some of the languages that I speak, I'm satisfied with the level that I have achieved. In the other languages that I'm learning, for example, Persian right now, I recognize my limits. It doesn't discourage me. I'm enjoying the process. I will get better. Sounding like a native is not my goal.
Which is fine. Again, I'm not attacking people who don't care about sounding like natives. It's just that it annoys me that a lot of the times the people like this, which are different to me, different to Matt versus Japan, different to Dorgan, different to a lot of you here in the comments, is that they have to create limits to us to justify their choice. It's your choice, but don't put us in this box. We want to sound like natives, as close to natives as possible. Let's put it this way. And it's okay that we miss that mark. We will. We will many times, and that's okay. But we love it. We love it. We love it. It's part of the process for us.
Maybe the fact that on the internet, YouTubers, I think there's a tendency amongst all of us to try to come up with a title, and maybe that's the case here with this video.
No,
we want to try to snare, eyeballs, say something a little bit controversial or shiny object to attract eyeballs.
Yep.
But for most people, it's not an achievable goal.
Note, now he said most people. So at the end of the thing, the video, he said what I say. For most people, which means, this is English here, it means that for some people it is. So how many minutes so far? 6 minutes and 35 seconds of telling us why it's not possible to then reach the same conclusion that I presented at the very beginning. It is possible, but just for a few select number of talented people. Here we are.
I don't even think it's something that most people think about. As long as they're able to understand what people say, if they're able to get their meaning across, if they have a sense that they can improve in the language, that's really all most people want to do.
I actually don't know. You could be right, and maybe I am part of a smaller community that is obsessed with native-like pronunciation or close to native-like pronunciation, but I guess there is a way to test it, at least within this channel's community. Are you one who belongs to his group, who thinks, yeah, I don't care as long as I can understand, who cares if I sound as foreign as... Or are you belonging to my group, where we are like, no, how do they say it? What is it? How do I change? What's the decibel? How do you pronounce it exactly? Is it this one? Is it a interdental fricative or is it not? Like that sort of situation. Which box do you belong to? Which group? Let me know.
It is rather remarkable that most people drop off at about A2, B1. In other words, they've gone through that early stage where there are some easy victories. They now, understand some things. They have a bit of vocabulary. And it's at that point that they have to commit to staying the course. And most people don't. And I think rather than suggesting somehow an unrealistic goal of sounding like a native, as people who are, keen on language learning, I think our goal should be to motivate people to stay the course. You don't have to become a native. You won't become a native. There are people who speak very well. You may or may not get close to their level, but you have to believe that if you continue putting in the time, doing the reading and listening, speaking when you have the opportunity, without worrying about your performance, then you will continue to improve.
I appreciate the message in general. I just dislike the part where he says you won't. How do you know? I mean, there are people that do. There are people that compare his Japanese to that of Matt versus Japan. And then let's talk. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. Anyways, as usual stuff. He pissed me off a couple of times. In general, I disagree. But there was a core message underneath of trying to be positive and helping people not to drop off that I strongly agree with. So usual stuff. It's literally like a textbook as far as my reaction to his content are concerned. Thank you for watching and joining Metatron's Academy. Bye.